Welcome to Home Assignor. The purpose of this tutorial is to explain the core process and procedure for Client Services Level 1 Basics. These tutorials will aid in your progression in becoming an effective Client Services Facilitator Level 1. The Inbound Call Center Basics do encompass part of the scope of training for the Client Service Facilitator. This complete tutorial training program will develop topics including the following: what we do, client expectations and experience, successful client interaction with proper documentation. It is also very important for you to remember that all aspects of our business is deemed both private and confidential. Processes, procedures, and methods are not to be shared without express written consent. Agreements of non-disclosure and non-compete will be executed by your training supervisor. The viewing, acceptance, and/or execution of work shall serve as implied agreement and consent with our policies and guidelines regarding confidentiality. This is in keeping with universally accepted standard business practice throughout the financial service industry of which you are now a part. We look forward to your future growth and success.
As a Client Service Facilitator Level 1, your role in ensuring a great first experience is critical. The first step toward building this successful interaction is your having an understanding of what our desired client service experience should include. Also, you must understand what the client's expectations are of you. Whether you receive the inbound call directly or return a call of inquiry. We shall now discuss more on the topic of client expectations and successful client interaction. Home Assignor. What we do. Home Assignor is a team of alternative asset investors, financial strategists, and legal professionals specializing in the development, acquisition, and sale of real property. Our property liquidation services acquire and fund real estate transactions within expedited time restraints. This service requires client service facilitators to manage client expectations with both empathy and professionalism. We provide capital funding for commercial and distressed residential assets. Other asset allocations are executed within other managed portfolio divisions. The focus of this entry-level tutorial is facilitating asset purchases of small-cap commercial and investment-grade residential property. To assist you in servicing these clients well, we shall now review current client acquisition marketing products used to generate call inquiry. We will now watch the video in the next slide. You should strive to become acquainted with all aspects of its content.
Marketing video review.
We shall now review main aspects of the video. This will prove to be beneficial as it improves your ability to field clients' questions more effectively. The expectations are for you to have basic knowledge of subject matter pertaining to the content of your phone call. The operational protocols for your call do not require or suggest you to recommend specific products or services as a client service facilitator level 1. Your vital function is to obtain and verify client information. You will forward this information as directed. These directions will be further explained during our presentation. Video explanation. The name of the company is Assignor. The main points to remember about this marketing piece is listed below. Number 1. Our company buys and sells homes, apartments and real property real estate. Number 2. We are a dedicated team of alternative asset investors and financial strategists. Number 3. We offer 4 effective purchase options for our clients. Next. Our 4 effective purchase options are listed below. Alternative financing solutions include purchase options in lieu of total cash transactions. The equity share joint venture partnership is a partnership with homeowner to achieve sale of property. The sale and leaseback program allows homeowner to remain in home for a time after the purchase of the property. The cash offer is the purchase price which we will pay in cash to buy the home, usually within 7 to 30 days. You shall now view the following videos to further enhance your knowledge of the topics which we have discussed.
So alternative investments are exactly what they sound like. They're alternatives to traditional investments. Now, when I was in school, I was told that your money should be in equities, stocks, fixed income, bonds, or money markets, basically in the bank. Now, we have this whole other class that diversifies you away from these traditional asset classes, and that's called alternative investments. Now, in these alternative investments, we have private equity and venture capital. Now, are those two things different? We'll find out in the next video. Infrastructure, which could be highways, airports, utilities, real estate, retail, office, residential. We have timberland. We have managed futures. We have credit instruments. And you know what? We can even include hedge funds. Now, most people do include hedge funds. Nowadays, looking at how hedge funds are somewhat correlated to the market and seeing their returns, I'm not really sure they should be in this asset class, but those people say hedge funds are alternatives, so let's leave it in. More and more investors have been increasing their allocation to alternative investments. Why, you ask? Well, alternatives will give you increased diversification and an enhanced return. Let me give you an example of investors that have a decent portion of their allocation in alternatives. The top 10 pensions in Canada have a 32% allocation to alternatives. Now, these top 10 pensions in Canada have $1 trillion in assets. Yes, that's trillion with the T, which would mean their alternative asset allocation is over $320 billion. And remember, this isn't the top 10 pensions in the world. It's the top 10 pensions in Canada.
I'm Rick Kaler. Thanks for joining me. Not long ago, the Rapid City Journal did an excellent 2-part series on the 1986 sale-leaseback by the state of South Dakota of many of its government buildings. The proceeds of the sale-leaseback put a total of $29 million into infrastructure improvements over several years with no cost at all to taxpayers. It was described by then-Governor Bill Janklow as making money out of nothing. While the transaction was viewed by many people as confusing, it really isn't that difficult to understand. Sale-leasebacks have been a tool used by owners of real estate for decades, and the concept isn't terribly complicated. Let me explain it. So basically, a sale-leaseback is a transaction where an owner of a property sells it to a buyer, then immediately leases the property back from the buyer. The seller, rather than moving out, stays in the building and rents the premises from the new owner. The seller ends up with cash and gets to stay in the building for the term of the lease, becoming a renter. The trade-off is that the seller now becomes the tenant, and the buyer ends up with the building and a tenant, typically a long-term tenant, and income in the form of rent. So why would a seller and a buyer want to do a sale-leaseback? Well, there are many potential advantages and disadvantages on both sides. One reason is that the seller has a greater need for cash than owning the real estate. Perhaps they can use the cash in their business. Perhaps they can purchase a different asset at a significant discount, thus receiving a higher return than owning the real estate. Selling may also be a way to lock in high real estate values in anticipation of a real estate crash. For the buyer, the purchase may serve as an investment opportunity that comes with a tenant already in place, eliminating the risk of letting a building sit vacant for months or years while searching for a new tenant. So this is basically what the state of South Dakota did. It sold 118 buildings to investors who then leased back the buildings to the state under an agreement where the state was obligated to buy the buildings back in 30 years. This is called a lease purchase, where the buyer has either an option or an obligation to purchase the property during the term or at the end of the lease period. The state invested just enough cash from the sale of the buildings to produce enough return to pay all the rent on the buildings, enough return annually to pay that rent for 30 years, and then fund the repurchase of the buildings. When that was said and done, the state had $12 million left over from the sale. The main factor that made this work was that the state was able to invest the money at a higher return than the cost of leasing back the property. Had the cost of leasing back been greater than the return the state could have received on the sale proceeds, this wouldn't have worked, as the state would have lost money. Additional benefits a seller may realize from a sale-leaseback are tax advantages. For one thing, lease payments are 100% deductible. Or perhaps a seller may have large business losses that could be used to offset a large gain from selling their real estate. It's a way to benefit from the unfortunate loss, at the same time gaining money to put back into the business. The funds can be used for any purpose the business may have, including investing the proceeds to fund a lease purchase, just like South Dakota did. While the details of a particular sale-leaseback may be complex, the basic purpose is straightforward. It's a way to use real estate as a way of providing business benefits to both parties. Thanks for joining me.
Welcome, I'm Tony Cordato, property lawyer. I'd like to chat about how joint ventures work for real estate. Can we start with how to put a joint venture for real estate together? Well, you know the old saying, 2 heads are better than one. That's true, so we must start with 2 or more like-minded people. Those like-minded people want to join together to carry out a joint venture project. The project could be a simple one: buying a house and renting it out, or buying a house, renovating and either renting it out or selling. Or the joint venture partners might wish to boost yield on a house, so they build a granny flat in the backyard, or they enter into a vendor finance arrangement, both of which will give them better yield than simply renting it out. The joint venture partners could be more sophisticated. A more sophisticated joint venture would be to buy a property and subdivide it, buy a property and build some townhouses, or they could get really adventurous and buy a few properties, consolidate them and have a real estate property development. For that they might need, as joint venturers, an owner, a property developer, some investors and a builder. But the resulting development is beautiful. Assuming we have some joint venture partners and a project, we're missing an agreement. We need a joint venture agreement. So let's turn to the words of Justice Michael Kirby, who in a 1996 case said, "This is what you need for a joint venture agreement. A joint venture is a particular and increasingly familiar form of business relationship, typically defined in a written agreement where the parties contemplate a harmonious and cooperative relationship of mutual advantage." Fine words, but what do you need? You need the names of the parties, you need to describe the project, you need to describe the contributions by each party, you need to describe the profit sharing at the end, and you need to describe what would happen if things go wrong, the termination clauses of a joint venture. But before you go forward, you must decide what legal structure the joint venture should take. Well, if it's a simple joint venture, the parties buy the property jointly in their individual names or in the names of their family trusts. It could be that one of the joint venture partners wants to be a silent partner. In that case, the property is bought in the name of one of the joint venture partners. More sophisticated joint ventures require more sophisticated legal structures, and they could be to purchase in the name of a company, which could be a special company, as they have in Queensland. It could be as a trustee of a unit trust, or it could be as trustee of a custodian trust. The actual choice depends on your circumstances. Now, for more information about joint venture structures, for assistance in joint venture agreements, and possibly introductions to joint venture partners, why don't you contact us at Cordato Partners Lawyers and look at our website, propertyinvestmentlawyer.com.au.
What are real estate cash offers? A real estate cash offer is a contracted offer to purchase real estate without conventional financing. The purchase involves all cash or cash equivalents. The rapid liquidation of real estate is sometimes a result of impactful events such as the following: job relocation, job loss, bankruptcy, divorce, marriage, capital reallocation, client interaction. While facilitating these phone calls, you may be asked the following questions: how much money will you pay for my property? How long will it take to close and receive funding? When will I receive the offer? Acknowledge their question and inform the client that, after I have verified your home description, I will forward it to our property acquisition department. Then, a confidential property offer and terms of agreement will be emailed to you. A representative will also contact you to answer any question which you may have. Fiverr Compensation Plan. The compensation program for Fiverr contractors is as follows. Fiverr Standard Pay Rate. This base rate is on average $5 per every 50 inbound-outbound telephone calls facilitated. Proper call facilitation include home data verification and documentation as directed. Fiverr Base and Incentive Program 1. This program is available to client service facilitators who have successfully facilitated 50 inbound-outbound client service calls. This base rate is on average $7 per every 75 inbound-outbound telephone calls facilitated. The facilitator. Incentives include the base pay plus $50 for every completed transaction. Fiverr Base and Incentive Program 2. This program is available to client service facilitators who have successfully facilitated 125 inbound-outbound client service calls. This base rate is on average $8 per every 155 inbound-outbound telephone calls facilitated. The facilitator. Incentives include the base pay plus $125 for every completed transaction. Monthly pay incentives. Monthly pay incentives are paid out in addition to structured and incentive compensation program levels. Details for these incentives are subject to change on a monthly basis. Instant pay incentives and bonuses. Instant pay incentives and bonuses may be paid at any time and are in addition to all other structured and incentive programs. The following lessons will demonstrate how to follow the client call process. The process includes accessing your Outlook private mailbox, selecting the designated Excel spreadsheet, how to use Skype call account for contacting clients, making records of client remarks, acknowledging a completed client call log. These topics will now be discussed.
After entering your mailbox, click the blue square to gain access to Online Excel and Online Microsoft Word applications. Verify both are operating properly. If you are having difficulty, then send us an email to plumatacapital@outlook.com. Subject line: IT support. Explain the problem which you are having with the applications. You shall be contacted when the issue has been resolved successfully. Accessing your Outlook private mailbox. Online Excel spreadsheet is accessible through your assigned private mailbox. Access your mailbox by doing the following. Type www.outlook.com into the web browser. Enter your username into the sign-in box and press Next. Accessing Microsoft Excel and Word online applications. Access the Excel client spreadsheet by selecting Excel from the app menu. Software access demonstration will follow.
Client Service Facilitator Level 1 Tutorial Module 1. Module 1. You may consult your private mailbox for your assignment Facilitator Level 1. Tutorial 1. Module 1. You may consult your private mailbox for further instructions.